Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second edition of Uranium Exploration School. Our teacher, just like in part one, is one smart lady, and I'm sure that the majority of you who are investors in uranium sector know her. She is Dr. Rebecca Hunter, VP of Exploration for Forum Energy Metals Corp. Rebecca, welcome to our part two of this educational series.
Thanks, Lucian. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you very much. You have a company behind you. We see it.
Yeah.
Before we start with the education, I have two things I would like to hear more about. First is the news out today where your company announced significant gold assay values from Thelon Basin. Tell us more, Rebecca, please.
So I guess the story is that these deposits have a certain amount of gold in her. We knew that from Orano. They let us know a long time ago when I was with Cameco. They said there's some gold, but I never did assay for it because it was just extra money and it didn't seem to be a priority.
Mhm.
But then it kind of came up again, and Rick's like, let's test. So that's what it was. We just kind of ran the samples again, and we got these really nice gold grades. And so yeah, it's true. There's gold, and it's pretty neat because it's very much tied to the uranium mineralization, but it's also between kind of in the kind of waste to lower grade intervals, kind of between the lenses. So you kind of have potentially some payable rock between actually the main mineralized zones. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, definitely, and a nice bonus for the company. Why not? Why not have gold? Second question is, how are the preparation for the upcoming drilling campaign going?
So the basically we've got some sleds all loaded up. So we got some big fuel tanks and we got our drill and all that stuff. So it's all ready to start hauling. So I was in Baker Lake last week, and so I got to see them and go with meet with our contractors and stuff that'll be doing it. Peter's expediting.
Mhm.
And so we're excited. So in about a couple weeks we'll start moving stuff overland. So that's exciting. We'll start the camp build probably in May because you need the snow to be mostly gone, or at least the start of it. And drilling June to September. So that's the plan. Hopefully getting some results trickling out in July. So that's the
Excellent.
plan.
Excellent. I saw your tweet. It was minus 60
Yeah, minus 60 with
with
the
wind.
wind, with
Oh my
wind, and
God.
there was a lot of wind. So it was
That's probably a feeling of minus 80. I mean, minus 60 plus wind.
I don't even know anymore. I live in Victoria now. I'm not even used to that
Mhm.
anymore. So yeah, it's a bit of a shocker.
Definitely. One other thing, I saw the news where government of Nunavut representatives will visit the Kivalliq communities starting over next 2 weeks as a part of the study, looking at the possibility of linking them by road. That would be a good thing for your project. I mean, the project would connect Chesterfield, Rankin,
Yeah.
I believe some of the others I can remember right now, but it
Yeah.
is a big news for your project, right?
Yeah, I mean any infrastructure, and I think another key component of this is devolution. So the basically Nunavut becoming a governing territory of its own without, the federal oversight.
Yeah,
I think that's going to change things because they need to make, you need infrastructure to build their territory, and they need that autonomy to make those decisions. So,
yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay, Rebecca, let's start with the education. My first question that crossed my mind is geological sampling before drilling. Can you tell me more about that? Why are some companies are doing that, some are not? I mean, are the old properties suitable for sampling? Tell me more.
yeah, so essentially, if there's outcrop or, worthwhile ability to get information through sampling, either if it's bedrock, you have actual bedrock in the area, or you have tills that can tell you something about, if there's deposits in the area, it's very worthwhile. It's very it's very cheap. Like it's usually, tens of thousands of dollars. It's
Mhm.
very cheap. But it gets you to know the rocks. And so companies that take that time to go and look at the geology of the area kind of firsthand, look at old showings, and see exactly, what's going on is really important. And so, but not all, again, like it's not all projects have outcrop or showings or stuff to look at too. So, but if they do, it's really important. And I know that that's a big part of what we did in the Thelon in the last cycle is, and so essentially I knew all the rock types and everything pretty much that was going on before we started drilling. And so that it just adds value and make sure that you actually know what you're doing out there.
Okay. What about the use of spectrometer, scintillometer? Where and when is that used?
With prospecting, you use it all the time. So it's just a handheld device. And so on top of just getting out there and with a hammer and bashing rocks or taking samples, you have the scintillometer. So it'll tell you, like, first off, like right away if it's radioactive. So it's like a Geiger counter. It measures gamma radiation is what it does. And so it's the same thing we use on the core. And so, yeah, when we're out there, use the scintillometer to basically measure, see if it's radioactive or not. And that's, you know, it's a good way to prospect. And for uranium, you can do that. You actually have a device that can measure radioactivity.
Yeah. Is that reliable? I mean, how is that in comparison with assays, with assays?
So it's not 1-to-1. So essentially it gives you a value. It's basically giving you gamma radiation, but a lot of things can give off that radiation. So potassium gives off gamma. So even salt can give off, you know, gamma radiation, or thorium gives off gamma. So it's not precise. So you don't know exactly if it's uranium or not. So that's why you have to do an assay. So you basically, you could say, yeah, that's radioactive. Definitely something going on. If you can't see the actual uraninite or uranium minerals, and then you would take it for assay to actually get that concentration. So the scintillometer, you can kind of guesstimate and say, you know, if it's off scale, if you have an off scale reading, then likely you're looking at something that's over 1% in grade, but you don't know exactly what grade that is.
Of course,
so
that's like 10,000 ppms is like 1%
yeah,
uranium, let's say.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can do those conversions too, but the scintillometer just purely tells you that it's radioactive.
Yeah, and that usually means that, let's say you have a surface sampling, and that usually says that you have something in the ground, right? It's a
Yeah,
good sign, so to say.
very good sign. Most of the time you get nothing. It's just it's background. So yeah, if you actually are on the ground and you actually get radioactivity, especially off scale, yes, you're on the right track.
Okay. Can you discuss the range of results you have encountered in your career? For example, I saw you had off-scale readings on Northwest Athabasca joint venture. I saw a slide in your presentation. What kind of my question is, what kind of results did you see in your career?
Yeah, so I mean, the Northwest Athabasca, that was some of the drilling that was done like several years ago. And so they hit some just very small zones of mineralization, mostly just smoke kind of a thing, but enough that it was off scale. So the small little sample that was radioactive was, you know, over 1% over a very, very small interval. But yeah, in my career, I mean, you know, when you're out prospecting, if you get a couple hundred, you know, counts per second on your thing, like just the scintillometer, that's interesting because it's usually background. So whatever the natural radiation is, you know, it could be 50 counts per second or 100. So anytime it goes over, you're interested. So because obviously something's going on, and then you sample it or you see if you can find it getting higher. So I've encountered the spectrum from nothing, lots of nothing, to something that's very insignificant for most people, to, you know, really high grade stuff. So it's, yeah, you get the gambit and you try to keep honing into that big stuff.
Okay. Rebecca, if you were to look for a new unexplored projects, what would you pay most attention to? I mean, what factors that determine a good due diligence?
The biggest thing is to get into the history. And so the first step is to just get into all the old assessment reports, or the reports that have been done, the work that your own company has done, if they've done work. And so it's really just going into that old data and bringing it all, like some of it, can be from the 70s or 80s. And so it's bringing it all, into your GIS. I'm a big GIS user, so I love working in that platform because I'm very visual. And so bringing in all the samples, all the drill holes, and then all the chemistry, bring in all the geophysics. And so you just keep adding all those layers. Like that's the best due diligence. And just thinking, thinking geologically, like where do you have the right rocks? Not all rocks will precipitate uranium. So you need those reducing rocks that, uranium will precipitate in, like metasediments or metavolcanics. You need the right structures. So you need, is this area affected by any faults? So you look at that, sometimes fairly subtle. You can find it in a boulder. Like I remember just walking over the ground and seeing basically fault rock in a boulder. It's not radioactive, it's not even interesting, but at least that something's going on. And so that's kind of the biggest thing, is that ground, that kind of desktop work, and then getting on the ground. And like I said, seeing that there is actually fault rock, because a lot of it is undercover. That's why we so heavily use geophysics, because it doesn't come to surface. And then, yeah, the next step, of course, is getting that geophysics done if you don't have surface expression, so that you can see, again, does the geophysics tell you anything interesting? But that's kind of the method. Yeah.
Definitely. Let's go to more advanced stuff. Can you explain to our audience what is NI 43101, National Instrument 43101?
So basically, it's just a set of rules. It kind of stems from, bad actors, and so came into place after BRIEX, and it was it's kind of governed, I guess, by the Securities Commission in Canada. So it's basically just a set of rules, so that the hope is that they've kind of set out exactly when you do a press release, or you especially if you do a resource or do any reporting, that you basically follow a fairly regimented script of what you can write, as far as, like what information needs to be put in that report. And then also the terminology, it's very terminology based. And so that you use definitions properly. If you use resource, it has a specific definition. Or if you do a detailed resource, you got indicated, you got inferred, measured. Like these all have very specific definitions, and so you can't just use them willy-nilly, I guess. So anyways, that's why it basically, so that investors have kind of, I guess, can have more confidence that what a company is putting out there is valid. So that's what it's for. And that's what it is.
And can you explain the difference between indicated and inferred resources?
Basically, it's just a level of confidence. And so inferred has less confidence than indicated. And I think, and it equates to drill hole spacing in the end, or confidence in your ability to model a deposit. But it's all very governed by geology. And so some deposits are very simple, and they can have fairly widely spaced drill holes and have even a proven resource or a measured resource, because it's just very uncomplicated. More complicated, you need to bring it in. So you're probably sub 100-meter or 50-meter drill spacing to move that resource into what you'd safe to say maybe be more of a indicated or measured sort of thing. So, but it's all geologically dependent, and it's also very dependent on the company or the people, the technical people, what they know about. If they don't have it right, it's still going to be wrong. So there's a level of uncertainty, just people dependent.
Yeah, great explanation. But Rebecca, how much work and what kind of work is to be done to bring one property to a resource category?
Oh, lots of work. And I'm certainly, again, I'm not an expert. I haven't actually done that part, but a lot of drilling. So basically dependent on, again, the geology, a lot of infill drilling so that you know exactly you can model and have confidence that you have the deposit right and the size. A lot of geotechnical sampling. So you're not only just logging it for the mineralization, but the fracturing in it so that you have an idea of how messy it'll be to extract exactly, or and then density of the rock. Like you're doing tons of measurements so that you have the most accurate model of that deposit.
Yeah,
Lots
and
of money and lots of money. It takes a lot
definitely,
of money.
always, always. Yeah, when it comes to reporting, we have it's not the same everywhere. We have in Canada we have NI 43-101, and in Australia we have Joint Ore Reserves Committee Code. It's different. It's a little bit
Yeah.
different. Can you explain the difference between those two?
So I guess one was written more by lawyers, so the National Instrument one, and then the JORC is more of a technical group. And so they still it's similar in the fact that they have kind of a standard layout of what you need to report, like what sort of things you need to write on. But I think JORC is just more it's a little more lenient, a little less checking boxes. And
Mhm.
so it's basically the technical person that's writing it has a bit more leeway on exactly what they write about. So it's just different. And really, either one comes down to the technical team that's working on it. So you can check all the boxes you want, but if you don't actually understand the deposit, it's still not gonna be accurate. And then, so the JORC one can be better in that sense, or it can be worse depending on the technical person.
Yeah, I would like to hear more about the organizational preparation for drilling. That is definitely your field. When does that start? What are the first steps? Please tell me more.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the jurisdiction. Like in the Thelon, it's a year in advance that you at least get the balls rolling. Because
Mhm.
for us, the cheapest way is to bring stuff up on barge, and so you need to kind of be thinking a year in advance to get equipment up and stuff like that. That's not necessarily the case if you have roads and stuff, so you don't. But you still need to be, several months in advance. You need a drill contractor. Obviously, that's the big one, and so. Uh, and that can be tricky when times are busy. There's not enough drillers. There's the companies their slate is full. So depending on how much you want to drill, if you just have a tiny little program and it's busy, it can be terrible to just even find a drill contractor. But if you have big programs and lots of money and stuff like that, it can be easier. You got to get all the consumables up there. So core boxes, fuel. In the Thelon, that's a big thing because helicopters use jet fuel, um, and you need it to get to and from the drill. You need diesel, so you have to bring a lot of fuel in. So, anyways, there's all these steps: getting your staff, getting your camp in place if you need a camp. That's a job of its own. So, yeah, there's a lot of steps involved, a lot of project management.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my main question about the project management. I mean, like you said, drill contractor are the most difficult part to find. So, did you have any problems with your project to find them?
We lucked out in the Thelon because there happened to be a drill contractor that was already working for projects up there. So that helps because, mobilizing drills into you know, up to where we are just takes more logistics, more money. So there happened to be a drill up there already. We got the contractor that's already there. Yeah, and also because we only work in the summer, a lot of drill contractors, are more hesitant to work with a company like in our jurisdiction because their drills aren't turning in the winter. So you come up with ways to deal with that. Either you kind of rent the machinery, to kind of cover their costs or whatever. Um, but yeah, I mean, it can be tough. But luckily we got a drill up there, so we're good. And in Saskatchewan, it's a lot easier. There's a lot more vendors and, good relationships with a lot of the companies. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And Rebecca, I know it's not your field, but you probably know that. What kind of drilling do we have? I'm sure that most of the people have heard about the term diamond drilling. What else can you expand on the diamond drilling, and what else do we have besides that?
So diamond drilling is just basically it's using diamond coated bits, and that's where we actually get the tube of rock out of the ground. So that's the most common. Well, at least the most common. It's not necessarily the most common at all, but if you actually want to hit the rock and actually see it intact, that's what you use, and that's what I prefer to use. But you can use other methods, cheaper methods like RC. Reverse circulation drilling, they use, they don't need as much or no water. They can use water, but no water. And you just basically get chips. It's more basically grinding down and pumping up chips. And so you're not actually going to see the core. So you're not going to see the rock is intact. You're going to kind of look at chips instead.
Yeah.
And so there's a number of methods. RC, the reverse circulation, is one type. There's a kind of ones where they pulverize more, but you can't go as deep. Well, I don't know if that's either true either. In the hydrocarbon world, they can go pretty deep. But anyways, you have to kind of choose which method. For kind of mineral exploration in the Athabasca and the Thelon, for the most part, diamond drilling is what you want because you want to see the rock.
Okay, when it comes to rigs, how many days is required to have one rig operational from the moment it was brought on site?
It all depends what you negotiate with the contractor. Like it's basically dictate, you kind of set out how much meters you want to do and come to an agreement with the drill contractor. And so you try to stick to that. Like we want to do 10,000 meters at least this summer. So that's kind of our goal. And it's probably gonna take us 3 or 4 months to do that with the 2 drills. Hopefully quicker, but we'll see.
Yeah, and
So yeah.
sorry, I interrupted you. Please continue.
No, I think that was really it. So
Okay.
go ahead.
My next question was, how often do they stop working? I mean, the rigs,
Oh,
are they reliable?
they run steady. So they're 24-hour operations. There's 2 shifts. Um, I mean, sometimes they break down. So yeah, so there's it's machinery, so things can go wrong. But typically, you're not down for more than a day. It depends what breaks and then how much access you have to extra equipment. If something, the head breaks or some component on the drill breaks, hopefully you have spares. The biggest thing working in a more remote location is you want to have access to spares so that you can easily get up and running. So essentially nonstop, and then moves, then you're basically you drill till you finish the hole and then you move it. Usually that can take a couple hours to a day, depending on how far you're moving the drill. But that's kind of what you're looking at.
Yeah, and is the weather a factor for weather conditions a factor for drilling, or the rigs can operate in almost every condition?
They are hardy. So, I mean, some of the extreme cold can cause a lot of issues though. So, and that has to do sometimes more with water lines and stuff. So one of the things when you're working in the winter, you've got to heat water from a frozen lake and bring water over to your drill because you need water. So sometimes that's basically a hiccup that can happen, like the water lines freeze or the pumps break. But the drills themselves are usually pretty hardy. For weather, if you have a ground-based sort of program where you're just basically moving your drill over land, the weather, besides deep snow, maybe a big blizzard can stop operations for a bit. The weather isn't too big of an issue. When you use a helicopter, though, it definitely is. And so if you have foggy weather, low ceiling, high winds, that would make the helicopter moving more dangerous, then yes, then definitely you have to work around that weather condition.
And how many people are operating one rig approximately?
So yeah, one
In
rig,
average.
it'll be basically it's a crew of 4. So it's like a driller helper, a night shift, a day shift, and then you have a foreman, sometimes another kind of foreman helper sort of role. So the foreman works, supervises the drill crews, and then basically helps with consumables. So they help, bring in fuel because you're going to burn a drum a shift kind of thing, to bring in fuel, bring in core boxes, what have you. So they're kind of help with that, help with any breakdowns. Yeah, so that's kind of basically each drill has 4, and then you have the foreman.
Okay. And Rebecca, what other facilities does the average camp have?
So essentially, I guess it all depends on the scale of it, but it can be even pretty rustic. So you have your sleepers, you have basically a kitchen, a mess hall kind of thing, a kitchen tent, and a dry that everyone uses, so like showers and whatnot. And then usually for a drill program, you also kind of want a driller specific dry so that they can hang their coveralls and have a space, for all their equipment and stuff like that that's separate from everybody else. So that's usually pretty key, especially for radioactive core and stuff. So basically, so that you don't have to contaminate or have, people with coveralls that might have uranium residue on it getting with everything else. So anyways, that's basically it. And then you have core shacks and stuff for us to do our work, and that's about it.
Nice. What about the drilling costs, Rebecca? You have, I believe that you have for this drilling campaign already arranged what are the costs for that. Did they go up sharply or they stayed the same like the last year? Tell me more.
No, they've gone up a little bit. I think, it's just the cost of doing business, with all the inflation that we have post-COVID, um, but not incredibly so. So yeah. So I mean, we'll see once we actually get our operation together, with the helicopter, get into the swing of things. But, my all-in cost, I'm hoping for about 500 a meter. So that's kind of what I'd like to see. But we'll see. I think in Saskatchewan, you can get that down to 300, with big operations. But with inflation and stuff, it's going up everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned who else is on the side on site besides you mentioned drill operators, your crew. Who else is there?
Essentially, we have, a cook staff. So you have your kind of cooks that usually a couple of them. You have people that can do first aid,
Mhm.
like a significant level of first aid. Usually you kind of bind that with the cooks. The cooks are kind of act as both.
Mhm. I
Camp,
didn't know that, really.
yeah. Well, it's just a good, because otherwise you have to pay another individual to kind of just sit in camp, and
Yeah.
that's not fun for anybody. So yeah, a lot of catering companies do first aid as well. So they kind of have that, they kind of have you covered. Um, Camp staff, so people that basically look after, making sure the camp operates, usually have a couple people in camp, depending on the size, doing that. We have wildlife people, basically because of, caribou and wildlife
Mhm.
concerns. We have people that do that. Um, Sometimes archaeology crews, sometimes biology crews. So yeah, it's kind of a smattering of people, to do the programs.
Rebecca, what are your top three challenges when doing such this drill campaign? What are the biggest challenges?
For me, it's just logistics. it's like the plan never, makes contact with the enemy sort of thing, because it doesn't. And so you have kind of a loose sort of thing, like I want to drill in June, but you never know. You can have hiccups with as far as the machinery not working, or like a big thing for me is that we need to haul this stuff over land, and the snow can go on you. So right now we have lots of snow, we have enough ice, but the weather really dictates big time how that plays out. So for me, the challenges is just kind of all that stuff you can't control. And you have to just be very flexible and trying to go with it, and know that you have about 5 different plans down the road to make sure that you can make it happen if things change.
Okay, can you tell me more about preparation for sending assays to the core to the lab? What are you doing prior sending the core to the lab?
So
How do you prepare that?
yeah, essentially you just take the samples, but one of the things you want to do is make sure you do the quality assurance kind of stuff. So you've got to basically take kind of duplicates, like make sure that you take kind of that QA/QC. So you have the samples all lined out how you want to take them systematically or assay, but you also have to make sure you take a certain percentage of duplicates. You add standards in there too, just to keep the lab. And that's actually also, I think, a part of the 43101, is that you have that quality assurance component, so that you can actually show that the lab is accurate, essentially, so that your assays are accurate. So, I mean, you kind of line that sort of stuff up. And, when you're doing your sampling, you make sure that you're getting a good representation of the grades. If it's mineralized, you assay similar, basically in our case, radioactivity. And then you make sure you have the shoulders, the non-radioactive, and then you kind of basically just have that series of samples so that you actually can make a good call on exactly what the grades are.
And what are you doing with the remainder of the core? It stays on site?
Yeah, we just basically we just have it. We split the core in half that we sample, and we leave that other half as a record at camp. So then it's always there. And then if we need to resample, you can quarter that and resample so that you have a record of it.
And how much time does it take for lab to process the core? I remember when we had COVID, it was like taking for ages. Did the situation improve in the meantime? And explain a little bit on the process.
Yeah, so it all depends on how busy the labs are. And so certain times, especially like at the end, the end of a winter field season, so like April, May, or September, onward, yeah, they can be busy. So it could, depending on how busy they are, it could take a couple months. But if it's not super busy, usually it's within a month, especially post-COVID. Yeah, COVID screwed all that up because of, restrictions and staff, being able to be in the same area. So, but now that's pretty much sorted out.
Yeah. How many labs do we have in Canada? Do you know the number?
I mean, I think, 3 or 4 big ones, the Bureau Veritas and ACT Labs, I don't know if they're the same. We use the SRC big time in Saskatchewan. So that one we use. That's the one we use because they have the knowledge for the uranium and whatnot. And it's in Saskatoon, and it's easy. Good company.
Okay, Rebecca, that was a part 2 of our school. I want to make another one. We will have part 3. I don't know when, but we will have it. So thank you very much, Rebecca, for this, and good luck with all your projects. And we will catch up again very, very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.